Hello and welcome to another episode of Educational. This is Roy.
This is Terry.
So we are the podcast that is chronicling not only my journey through aging. I'm not going to throw Terry under that bus. We're chronicling my journey through aging. She is timeless. She does not age, right? But also our parents. We both have parents that are living, and so as we go through the challenges of the different things that they need and trying to help them through the different obstacles of aging. We want to put that out there just to let you know you're not alone. It's happening to other people, but also we have professionals come on from time to time to give us some advice, things to look at, just to talk about, maybe talk to the seniors, talk to the adult children, talk to caregivers, just to put out some information that is hopefully useful. And today is no different. Terry, I'm going to let you introduce Amanda.
Yeah, Amanda Varga is the owner of CareTreks LLC, which is focused on supporting family caregivers of aged loved ones by providing the skills, knowledge, and resources they need to be more confident and competent caregivers. Her caregiving experience started at age 11 when she was the neighborhood babysitter. Her first work with the elderly was in middle school as a volunteer Candystriper. I haven't heard that in a long time. At a local home. Yes, the red and white striped uniform and the cap.
Oh, nice.
While earning her Bachelor of Social Work degree, she also provided specialized respite services for children with special needs. Immediately after graduation, she worked in brain injury supported living, quickly moving from direct care to management. After some years in the corporate world, and having 3 amazing children, she found herself back in the professional caregiving realm as both an overnight awake hospice sitter and director of client care for home care agency. Caregiving became far more personal when she and her husband moved his parents in with them in 2014. Both required 24/7 care and supervision with hands-on assistance. Amanda's personal caregiving journey had begun, and the following month, her 3 kids started 4th, 5th, and 12th grades. Amanda, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're so excited to talk to you about your journey.
Thanks for having me. That was great. It's kind of funny to remember all the different things I've gone through. So.
Oh my gosh, it's funny talking about the hat too, because I was looking at an old picture the other day of nurses, and they used to have that little cardboard hat that they wore around all the time. So
yep. Well, and as a Candystriper, you had to earn your cap. You earned a cap and you earned a pin, and it was a ceremony. You had to be there for so long, and so you had to earn the right to wear the little striped hat and get your pin. So
oh my gosh.
So depending on the hat and the striped pins, that was your captain's lapel stuff.
Yep, exactly.
Well, tell us how do you support caregivers in your endeavors that you have going on? We want to talk about, eventually we're going to talk about some different things, things that have come up with you in your life and things that you have seen also. But I just want to say, let you tell us how that you are supporting our caregivers out there now.
Well, it changed when COVID came, because CareTreks really launched the end of 2019, and that was not, hindsight's 2020, right? So there was COVID, there were clients, and the original iteration of CareTreks was to one family at a time, work in their caregiving space, see what they needed to make caregiving easier and more efficient in their home. And obviously that wasn't going to happen through most of 2020. So I shifted gears a little bit and changed my message and focused more on how to support people through other businesses. So one was to come alongside other service providers. So, if you're working with a wealth manager or financial planner, they have a solution for you at every stage of your life, right? They can help you if you're a young professional or a young family or a growing family and into retirement, but they don't have something tangible to support you when you're a caregiver. And for me, caregiving came in midlife, right? For some people, it comes much later when they're caring for a spouse or a sibling. And so by coming along with CareTreks, they can offer their clients, hey, I have someone to help support you. I know you're struggling in this. Let me connect you with CareTreks. So that's one area.
Okay.
And what I'm really excited about is actually, I want to bring CareTreks into the workplace as an employer-sponsored benefit. So all of these working family caregivers who are trying to juggle their professional world and their home world, and it's, as you guys know, it's kind of chaotic in your head. Even if you're not doing all the direct hands-on stuff, it's distracting during your day, and who's going to take mom to the doctor tomorrow, and should I be worried about the symptoms I'm seeing? And being able to say, hey, my employer offers something. I know I can access this information and get local referrals and local information to support me. That's really where I think CareTreks is going to go.
Okay. And it's an awesome journey because, well, from my experience, the daughter-in-law is the one that typically ends up taking care of everybody's family, of the husband's family, I guess. So,
Mm-hmm.
Terry does a good job at supporting mine for sure. But also, a lot of times our caregivers have to leave the workforce. And so either that or, I was talking to somebody the other day that was telling me they have an employee that has some issues going on at home, and it's really affected her work life. So I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that's the message that you want to try to get out there is how do we manage that as a company, as an employer? How do you manage and help your employees where they can still take care of those family members and do what they need to do, but yet be a productive part of their company and their job as well?
Yeah, and that productivity is really the key, because these employers are losing productivity. They're losing, money, if you really bring it down to it, with their caregivers or their employees being distracted by what's going on in their lives. And if that employee needs to leave, they're going to have the expensive turnover. Now they've got to recruit and train and onboard someone new. So doesn't it make sense to find out how can we help this person rebalance things? Do we need to talk about a job share? Do we need to talk about, obviously flex time or working from home is much more prevalent now, which is great. But it doesn't mean when that employee is working from home, they're able to focus as much either. So how can we bring support into the home and educate on adult day programs or home care or whatever the options may be to help them be a more effective employee and still be a caregiver to their loved one? So it's a matter of everyone's situation is different.
Right. And it's becoming more prevalent with the baby boom generation moving that way, with our lifespan growing longer. It's like this is not something that's going to peak in a few years and just go away. I think this is going to be around for a while. And this I've worked a lot in the senior living industry, and of course, we expected the peak years and years ago, but people have put it off longer. People are healthier longer. People are getting out into their 80s before they decide to make that decision, not 65 like it was once thought
Right.
it could be. So these are going to be things that employers are dealing with for years to come. You might as well embrace it and figure out how to navigate through it.
Yeah, be proactive with it. Have a solution for your employees before it becomes an even larger issue and you're scrambling. So that's definitely the message I'm trying to get out there. Let's help these folks before the crisis.
Well, and along the way, I mean, we're all getting older, so it'd be nice for us to have something in place to be able to deal with that as well.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we talk about turnover, like you said, it's a two-phase deal. First off, you lose the productivity.
Yeah.
And then the second part is somebody's gone, you have a vacant space. And so, I mean, this can affect your company for months. I mean, it's not like, hey, we hired somebody yesterday and our problems are solved, because even if they've been in that same industry, there's still a lot to learn about the company that you go to work with. So I do a lot of, in my consulting practice, I do a lot of work, focus mainly on that turnover. So that's why it's kind of a hot button for me, is that, we really need to figure this out, because we're losing good people that could work this out. But I think everything grows, that tension grows up to a point that they're like, I just can't take it anymore. And the easiest solution to leave the job and go do this full time.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe after 2 or 3 months, they get things settled down and worked out. So if we could have this, I hate to say it, but an intervention, if we could have an intervention earlier, help them solve these problems, what a great solution, a win-win for everybody.
Right. Right. And it's funny when you're talking about that turnover piece. So Harvard Business School did a study called The Caring Company. They released, I think, in 2017. And what they found is statistically, it's your C-suite level who will leave the workforce completely, right? The entry level and the lower level and mid-level managers, they may need to leave a workplace and find somewhere else that currently fits. They can't afford to stop altogether.
Mhm.
But it's your CFO who's going to come in one day and like, I'm out. You know, they've made their mark on the world. They probably have a great retirement plan, and they're working now because they really enjoy it and they're fulfilled. But mom is sick.
Right.
What am I going to do? Am I going to stay in this job that I really don't need technically for my retirement? Or am I going to take care of my mother? And all of that knowledge, all of that industry knowledge, and all of that corporate knowledge that walks out the door. Whereas, like you said, if we can have some kind of intervention or support before that breaking point,
Yeah.
how can we balance this? Again, how can we job share? How can we make this work out for everybody?
Yeah, and I think it's the educational part, which I'm sure, you know, that's a big component for you, but it's educating the employers and educating the employees. Sometimes they don't really realize that the burden is not all on them. There are avenues or things that you can do to get help. You know, and I doubt I can list all of them, but you know, there's homemaker services to have that person come in and maybe go through their help them with the mail, just make sure they're okay. The other great thing I think that we've talked a little bit about is the FaceTime or whatever, some kind of a video conferencing that, you know, it's easy to try to set up a dedicated machine for the senior at their house where, you know, you can check on them. But anyway, there's a lot of solutions out there. I think it's a matter of just thinking that situation through.
Yeah. And making it okay, I think, for caregivers to, or family members who have said, don't worry, I'll take care of you someday, or their parents have said, promise me you'll take care of me. Not everyone is cut out for the hands-on part. And maybe for that person, taking care of mom means finding the most appropriate place for her to live and keeping that parent-child relationship alive, visiting often and taking them to lunch and being involved, but maybe not the hands-on stuff. And that has to be okay. And a lot of people struggle with that, saying, I promised mom I'd take care of her. Well, this may not be your thing. So let's find the best way to take care of mom.
Yeah, there's a big guilt issue involved there.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is that we taking care of them may be just like you. I mean, good gravy. If my mother had to depend on me to take care of her, you know, she would pull her hair out and be screaming. So she knows that for us, the best thing would be for me to find somebody that is more capable of taking care of her and just kind of be that manager to make sure that the care is being delivered to her. And
right.
You know, you bring up the other point about our living situation. You know, there's so many tools to keep people at home, and coming out of the senior living industry, you know, I believe in that. I think it's a great option, but I don't think it's the only option. I think, you know, there are a lot of tools at our disposal that we don't even know about. Electronic, I think, you know, they're bed monitors and other kind of monitors that are non-obtrusive. They're not videos all the time, but things that we can do in order to kind of ensure some level of safety at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of the ones I was most fascinated by ages ago was it was a GPS tracker that just goes in your shoe. You plug it in at night when your care recipient is sleeping, and then it goes in their shoe. And if they happen to wander, you know where they are, right? But they don't feel like they're tracked. It's that just in case, you know. But there's again things where you can have a video monitor at home, but there's also just motion sensors you can have in your home. Yeah. So no one feels like they're constantly on camera, but a family member or medical professional can say, boy, they haven't crossed the hallway into the bathroom for like 18 hours, or they're crossing that hallway to the bathroom every 30 minutes. You know, maybe we need to check in on something. So there's not a video, but there's still a way to monitor. You know, there's so many amazing, you know, innovative options right now. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, I wish we would have had the GPS tracker for my dad who had Alzheimer's. Oh my gosh. He was a bull. He just did not want to give up his car keys. He didn't, you know, and there were a couple of times when he left the house and was gone. He drove and he was gone overnight. I think 2 days. One time it was not a good thing. If we hadn't had, not that the Amber Alert was out, but you know, we had no idea where he went. And he didn't even really know. He just, well, I was down here and I met some new friends, and, you know, he just wanted to socialize, I guess. But I wish we would have had that. That would have been a godsend.
Right.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the shoe monitor. You know, a lot of times people don't want to wear the bracelet or the pendant because they feel like it is so obtrusive that they're, I think that's a cool thing about the little shoe deal is that uh, a lot of times they don't even know that they have it on.
Right, right.
But but there is that time though, and this is a conversation that's difficult, but there is going to be a time where we do have to, people become a danger to themselves at home if they have fall habits, habits, but also if they have fall traps in the house. And, there are a lot of things we can do to remove those obstacles, extension cords, throw rugs. But sometimes, I'll just say from my parents' house, they have different levels. It's not that big, but you go down into the bedroom, up to the bathroom. The tile is like some kind of almost an actual rock looking stuff that's it's hard enough for me to walk across it without stumbling and tripping. So, there are things that we kind of have to do these in-home assessments as well to see, is it truly safe for that person to be here?
Yeah. And I mean, caregivers can definitely access, most occupational therapists will come and do a home assessment. I'm part of the Living in Place Institute. So certified living in place professionals, anyone with that designation has access to a checklist where you can go through the home room by room and let's talk about some hazards or let's talk about some changes. And then, there are home modification experts and home designers who specialize in that kitchen and bath, especially because those are usually the most dangerous, who have all sorts of amazing solutions that can change someone's home into a safer, more accessible place. So a lot of people think, oh, my home's not quite right as I'm aging, but I love my neighborhood and I know my grocery store and I know the mailman and I don't want to leave. There are ways to mitigate what's dangerous in your home and make it a safer place to live. And there's professionals out here there who that is exactly what they specialize in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a difficult decision, especially, if somebody's not ready to go, sometimes people are like, I'm out of here. I'm ready to go. And I think that's kind of the way we are. We're looking forward to it. We get us an apartment where you can shut the door and go travel and do stuff and not have to worry about all the maintenance. But, that's the way we feel today. Now, talk to me again when I'm 85 or 105. I may have a different story then because it's like that loss of, sometimes it's a loss of independence, but there are a lot of emotions that are wrapped around that as well.
Yeah. And, even when you're looking at someone who's lost a spouse recently, and that I want to stay here, but I don't know if I can stay here. And should I stay here? Or maybe they're just ready to go. I'm going to go move my kids. I'm moving in with kids. I'm going to find an independent living by my kids. There really are enough options to meet the needs of almost anyone if they're willing to think through what they want and be a little flexible in the specifics. There's options.
We were talking pre-show. It just came up, you've gone through some recent situations, I know. And we were talking a little bit about the teledoc. And, part of the other thing is like, sometimes it's hard to get people to go to the doctor. It's hard to get me to go to the doctor. It's not something that I want to do, not something I want to do, like to do. And, it's like the last resort. But the nice thing, I think, that the pandemic has opened up more and kind of shown us this teledoc feature. We can do some things remotely. And so we were just talking about, maybe not solving all of our problems, but that initial, should I go to the doctor? No, I'm feeling this, feeling that, but I don't really want to load up and go set an emergency room, even though vaccines are out and, we're seeing the numbers go down, there's still that COVID effect that's out there. So let's talk a little bit about, how we could use the teledoc system kind of as you really need to go seek more help.
And it's a great initial tool, right? Because just like you were saying, if you are caring for an elderly person, especially if their health is already frail, yes, maybe experiencing a health issue, but do you really want to take them to the emergency room and have them sitting with someone else? Do you really want to take them to the waiting room at the doctor's office? And, this is one of those silver linings of COVID, because more physicians are open to this option. They're signing on with their practices to have access to a telehealth option and are working to inform all of their patients, hey, this is my preferred method of initially speaking to you. Let's talk about your symptoms. Let's, take your temperature. A lot of folks have a blood pressure monitor in their home. We have a blood pressure monitor, pulse ox, we can do blood sugar. We can take all those measurements in our home and let the doctor know, hey, this is what we're seeing, this is what we're experiencing. So I think that as more and more people are open to the idea of having this kind of a face-to-face with their doctor initially and become more comfortable, it's going to be that much better in the health system, and especially for those in rural areas. I know out here that's been a topic of conversation on the networking meetings I've been on, is how do we get appropriate care and response to those more rural areas when they're going to have to drive 2-3 hours to potentially get care to see if maybe they have COVID. Okay, right. Let's back this up. Let's talk through symptoms and say, yeah, you should probably make the drive, or no, you're treat it this way and let's talk again tomorrow. So I think this has been one of the, again, it's been a great silver lining because telehealth has been here for a while.
Yeah.
And now it's becoming more prevalent and more people are more comfortable with it.
Yeah. And it's just the other thing too is, you don't want to be an alarmist. It's like, oh, I woke up with the pain this morning. Oh my gosh, I need to run to the doctor. Most people aren't like that. And so, but there's got to be a responsible range of time because, as we were talking pre-show, it's like, yeah, well, I woke up with a little pain this morning. I'm just going to shake it off, walk it out. Well, then next week it's like, still there, maybe even worse. And then 2-3 weeks. And then you go to the doctor and they're like, yeah, I mean, if you'd have came in 3 weeks ago, we could have nipped this and been done with it. So I think it's just trying to find, where is that line of, we need to seek further help. It's not going to go away by itself, or we can't self-medicate with aspirin or Tylenol or whatever.
Right. And it gives, especially the caregivers or the adult kids, some peace of mind, right? Because if mom or dad, they're resistant to going to the doctor, I don't want to do this, I don't need this. It's one thing, like you said, later it might be worse. But you've also got these adult kids who are worrying now. Okay, they're not going to sleep as soundly in case that phone rings in the middle of the night. They're going to wonder, is mom okay? Are we ignoring the wrong thing? So in some ways, it really kind of helps both parties, right? Yeah. Make sure the health of the elder is okay, but we're also going to give some peace of mind to the adult children, and that goes a long ways.
Right.
Oh yeah, that peace of mind is huge. It's a huge thing.
Well, I can't even
go ahead. Sometimes you need to phrase it like that. Dad, can you go to the doctor for my sake? I realize you're probably fine, but let's just, we'll do the telehealth thing. We'll call up the doctor and I'll feel better knowing that you're okay.
Yeah, you be the heavy. I mean, as much as you can.
Right.
Yeah. It's one thing, we live very close to our parents, but I can't imagine, living out of state because they can pick up the phone and call and we can be there in 20 minutes easy. But, I think about these, the adult children that live across the country or something, and it's just got to be such a burden that they carry.
Right. And that, if we can connect those long distance caregiving children to a care manager local to mom and dad who can kind of step in when needed, or, be aware of other services and, help encourage mom and dad to stay as independent as they're able. But again, give that adult child some peace of mind.
Right.
It's huge.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get back to the employer. I know, everybody is different, but, is there a general checklist and, kind of what is because I think as I was thinking through this, everybody's going to have a little different situation. So it's not going to be generic, but I think the biggest part may be, I don't want to call it the shame, but admitting that we need help, admitting that this is a burden for us. Do you see that as kind of some resistance?
Only to a certain point. I mean, when you talked about how it tends to be that daughter-in-law, or maybe it's that oldest daughter who's taking, I am pretty much a classic case. I mean, we're those people who you've got that level of responsibility and you also have that caregiving gene. You want to make sure everybody's okay. And there still comes a point at which, okay, I'm way overwhelmed. And it's just, there's a lot of guilt, not as much shame, I think, but guilt, because you start to second guess every single decision. You know, someone had told me a couple years ago, the guilt is a caregiver's constant companion. And it's true, because no matter what decision you make, no matter where you decide to spend your time, there is an opposite place you could be spending your time. You know, for me, if I'm focusing on my in-laws, am I not spending enough time with my kids? For caregivers, if I have mom and dad in my house, it's not really my thing, would they be better off in a community? If you place them in a community, would they be better off at home? And I think that, first of all, giving those caregivers an opportunity to say all those things, you know, it's really hard to say, I love my mom, I just really wish I wasn't dealing with this. It's not that you wish mom wasn't there, you just wish situations were different. And caregivers have so much guilt and confusion with, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do, or how I'm supposed to feel, or how I'm supposed to respond. So the idea is to just educate them, talk to them about what their options are, give them solid solutions for, you know, any of these options are good to keep mom in your home and you be the caregiver. Keep mom in your home and bring in home care. Keep mom in your home, but during the day she's at an adult day program. Have mom in a community care setting and you go visit mom and you're involved with mom. Every single one of those is a good decision. It's just a matter of what makes the most sense for you. And that, I think, is the biggest thing for caregivers, is understanding their options, understanding many of these options are good choices, and it's okay to make a decision and move forward with it, because otherwise we get stuck, you know, and you're just spinning your wheels and you're not doing anything, you're not changing anything, you're not exploring anything different. So people often don't even realize what their options are. You know, there was a different choice, and that's really where that customized help comes into play.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jen.
Well, I was going to say that so many times we don't know what we're looking for, because we're having to react to a situation. You know, something has happened to your parents or whomever you are going to be in the caregiving role with, and you react and just do what comes naturally to you, and you don't know what you need to look for. So I think it just seems to me that there are a lot of people just kind of going through the motions and just responding to the emergency situation and just doing the best that they can, not knowing that all these other resources are out there until they kind of stumble across something.
Right.
That's what,
you know, your loved one's not going to have an emergency when everything is calm, right? It's like you'd never had an ear infection on Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock. It was always at 6 o'clock on a Friday. And, you know, when you hear that mom's had a stroke or something has gone wrong, most likely these adult children have jobs, have social lives, have groups they're involved with, have kids in sports. And like you said, it's just reactionary. What is the immediate thing I need to do right now? Because I can't even think a day or two ahead or a week ahead. And that's when lack of knowledge limits their choices. And if there's a resource to say, what do I do? This just happened. Okay, take a deep breath. Let's talk about some options and steer you in the right direction.
Yeah, and that was the next point I was going to make, is that with kind of a family advisory role that you can take is talking these things out. Sometimes it's like, I had a great idea, but when I actually verbalize it to Terry, it's like, oh man, that sounded crazy. So, you know, sometimes it's just
never.
so sometimes it's just having that sounding board, somebody that you can talk these things through, but then also with your experience and with your knowledge, you know, you've got that, you know, kind of that deepened playbook that's like, okay, well, this is happening. These are things that I have seen done in the past, to give them a choice instead of either being reactionary or thinking that there is no choice.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that the other part that goes along with that is just support. Caregivers, a lot of times they, by the way of the situation, become isolated. You know, they don't get to go out with their friends and socialize. Maybe the person that they're caring for is somewhat non-communicative, where it's not like we can sit and have a great conversation and watch TV and do things together. So I do have some human interaction, but anyway, so having support of somebody that they can reach out to say, hey, this is happening. What do I need to do? And
Mhm.
kind of the other part of that is making sure that they keep some outside friendships, or just somebody that they can call and talk to, that gets them away from that caregiving role for just a few minutes.
Yeah, and that access to respite, understanding where they can get respite and what kind of support they can have. And it's funny, I have a presentation that I do for senior service providers, and it's meant to talk to them about what it's like from the other side of the table. I mean, I worked in the industry before I needed services, and it's the other side of the table is a little bit different. And with COVID, it actually gives a very tangible example. So many people now, you say, okay, what happened to you for you during COVID? What happened in your life? Well, I couldn't go where I wanted to go. I couldn't see all the people I wanted to see. My life really wasn't my own. I was limited to certain times to go to certain places. Like, that is the life of a family caregiver, depending on the needs of your care recipient. I mean, honestly, our lives in our home didn't change as radically as it did for other people, because we were already limited to being able, we couldn't just pick up and go somewhere because we have adults we're caring for. It's a little different than bundling up your child and putting them in a car seat. It's not always going to be the best option. And so, there have been a lot of things we haven't done over the last 7 years as family caregivers because it just didn't make sense. So we need to make choices of, well, maybe we shouldn't do this because, so-and-so is not really feeling well. And we don't want to bring something home. And, my kids have been washing their hands when they come home thoroughly for years because you didn't want to get grandma or grandpa sick. If my kids were sick, they were isolated in our house already because a cold can send someone who's already frail to the hospital. So, it helps for people who are not caregivers to understand that that feeling of restriction and being limited that they felt during COVID isn't going to change that much for some family caregivers. And that gives people, I think, some empathy to say, hey, can I come sit with your mom for a couple hours? You need to go to a movie, go to the gym, go have dinner with your husband. And hopefully people will step up and be willing to support caregivers. And caregivers will be willing to ask and say, hey, I'd love to have a little bit of freedom too. Would you mind sitting with my mom? I'll make you dinner and, just come and hang out with her for a little bit. So.
And not feel guilty about it. I mean, know that you need the respite. I mean, for your well-being as well as for who you're taking care of.
Yeah, you're a much better caregiver if you step away from it every now and then. Right. I definitely learned that. I needed to step completely away from everything for a couple of days and then come back and I'm ready to take it all on again. But
so hard to recognize that too. It's like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, and we don't think about it's our loved one, but I used to be a long-term care ombudsman, a volunteer here in the state of Texas, and one thing that we noticed is that when abusive or borderline abusive, maybe verbal or just how residents were being treated, usually came when when the caregiver was exhausted, and it was a person that would never ever lash out under normal circumstances, but we asked them to double over, working 24 hours just because they need a body there. So that's the other part of that whole respite business, is that I think when we step away from it, we can come back refreshed, but also we have to know that that is when when we're tired, when we've been doing it for days and days and days in a row, that is when I guess the greatest chance for things to go wrong, either for us to lash out and say something or do something we wish we hadn't have done, or for us to miss that sign or not take them serious. So it's really important for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Safety of your care recipient and in your own mental well-being. You don't want to regret that later. Like, I can't believe I said that to mom. I was just tired. You have to be able to recognize in yourself when it's just time to step away for a little while.
Yeah. And I think Terry mentioned this too. It's not selfish. I mean, we shouldn't feel bad that we need to have that time to ourselves just to, decompress for a minute. And because, I think caregivers tend to fall into this trap. It's like they're there all the time. They're on 24/7 and they just don't feel like they can ever step away, which kind of leads into one more thing. I know we're running a little long on time, but the other thing is communication before the fact and setting up
Pre-plan.
A pre-plan, and knowing that everything is not going to always go according. I'll use Terry and her sisters. They communicate very well about who's going to do what for their mother, and not waiting until it's that emergency. And like you said, the emergencies usually happen, Friday night at 10 o'clock at night, where nobody's around anywhere. And then now I'm trying to call my brother and my sister and say, hey, this just happened. What are we going to do? How we handle it? Where, some things you can kind of talk out prior to it, and then see, if this happens, these are some things that we want to do. Even have a person like you, Amanda, we've got on our speed dial, that, if something happened, we can ring you up and say, okay, look, we're in this position, help us navigate this. But it's because, again, going back to the volunteer ombudsman situation is, and I tell the story all the time, but it's when I took that position, I thought I was protecting the nursing home residents from the big bad corporate nursing care providers. And after being in that role for a while, what I figured out was my biggest job was protecting the residents from their family members, because family members can unfortunately do some bad things. But it doesn't even have to be bad, but it can be like disagreements with the siblings. Be like, well, I think we need to do this. Well, do we even know what mom or dad would have really wanted? Have we talked about that? Kind of having that game plan, because there's no use wasting 2 or 3 days arguing amongst siblings before we can actually take action.
Yeah. And that, it talks to the fact that you need to have conversations way before things are even potentially wrong. I took an advanced care planning certification class through a local hospice in CU Anschutz, and talked about how to help facilitate conversations with families, because it's interesting. We don't deal with death very well here in the United States. It's something we don't want to talk about. And the thing is quite often the elders, the parents, kind of want to let their kids know what's going on.
Yeah.
But the kids, they're afraid the kids are going to hear, well, when I die, and everything's going to spiral off, there's not going to be a conversation. And the kids don't necessarily want to bring it up, because they're afraid mom and dad are going to hear, well, when you die, and make it be a negative thing. But it's really about encouraging families to have an open conversation, to say, this is what I would like. I want to be here as long as I can. So if something happens to me, use medical intervention. Or I've lived an amazing life, and the last thing I want to do is be like so-and-so who I saw on TV or heard something about, and I have my documents in place. We need to make sure folks have their medical power of attorney, their financial power of attorney. They have their last wishes written out, so that those kids aren't arguing. There's so many, you'll hear these families who, because back generations, you go back a couple decades, and it wasn't uncommon for people to have 7 to 12 kids.
Right.
You're talking about mom or dad right now, and they're maybe late 90s, early hundreds, and something goes wrong, and you have 7 to 12 kids who are not on the same page.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Get ugly, so it's a matter of having those conversations. For the parent side, have those conversations for the sake of your kids. Let's decrease the stress the kids are going to go through. They're going to miss you so much and feel the pain of your loss, but let's not add arguing into it as well. And the same for those kids, to make sure they're not putting mom and dad through medical procedures that mom and dad never wanted. I
was just going to say, for goodness sakes, write it down and share it with everyone, because it's like, that's another thing that you find is like, I've got this document, but one of the 7 kids has it and has access, and everybody else is like, well,
yes,
where did that come from? Did you write that up? And, just the validity of that. And the other thing that we've kind of started talking about is having this conversation from the child perspective. Is we don't just have to blurt out, what do you want when you're dying? Or we don't have to make that a negative or a kind of in that direction, but we can start the conversation with, hey, let's talk about your family, just like, tell us about, what did you like as a child? Or, try to learn some facts that maybe you don't really know, but then, you can kind of ease into the more difficult things, like, so if something were to happen, do you want to be on life support? Or, do you have these other documents in place? The other thing is, where are they? Because, what I found, again, I'll talk a little bit about, some of our family members that I know that they have all the documents, but they're kind of like, it's like an Easter egg hunt, because they're at the safety deposit box. Well, we took them to the lawyer to get some stuff updated. Okay, we've got them at home. So it's like, it's kind of that moving target. Where are they really at right this moment? So letting people know, having them is one thing, but you got to make sure people know where they are and how they can access them, because sometimes it's things that need to be accessed fairly immediately. I mean, we don't have time to spend a week, 10 days digging through closets and garages trying to find this information.
Right. Well, and I was talking to an attorney earlier this week too, who said, if you keep your official documents in your safety deposit box and you have died and no one else is a signer on this, well, you kind of need those documents to get permission to get into the documents, and it's a whole process to go through. So, let your family know where your documents are. If you don't want them to read them, seal them up in an envelope, but say, this is where they are. Yep. And something happens to me, here's where you come and get them. Make sure everybody knows where to find them, because you don't want to waste time, like you said, looking for the Easter eggs.
Exactly.
Solve the problems right away and find out what those wishes are. And, ideally you've had a conversation already, but you need to have them in writing for the hospital. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right, Amanda. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know we went a little long, but it's just a lot of great information. I feel like our audience needs this. We need to hear, we need to, me and Terry even need to be reaffirmed of these things, make sure that we're taken care of and know, have that planning and the communication in place before things go, before there is that emergency. So we're not in a panic mode. And then also, what we'd like to ask our guests at the end of the show is, what is a tool or a habit? What is something that you do in your daily life that you feel like really adds value?
That adds value. I make sure that I have that priority. I still have kids at home. We are caregivers still for my father-in-law, but I still have 15, 17, and 24-year-old who are here, and they are my priority. And I think that being a caregiver has shifted my perspective on how I live my life, because while, again, this is not to say we're unhappy to be caregivers, but there's things I don't want my kids to have to do for me. And so I will focus more on taking care of myself now at my age, so that there's less of a chance my kids will need to step in and provide the physical care for me later. And I think having that perspective to it has definitely changed some direction for me. I mean, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it changes my motivation in many of the decisions that I make. What I'm doing today, how will that impact me 30 years from now? And how will that impact my kids? And I think for that middle generation of caregivers, that's a big deal. It keeps your focus on something important.
Yeah, it's really important. Something that we have started talking about a whole bunch. We may have to coin this phrase, but don't outlive your wellness. It's nobody wants to be a burden on their kids or their spouse, and we kind of jokingly talk about that all the time. Is I'm not even gonna tell you some of our solutions we've come up with, but anyway, it's like, I just, I would hate for something to happen and burden Terry down or burden my kids down. So you're right. We need to take good care of ourselves and think about the decisions that we make today, for our health care, the way we take care of our bodies, I guess, and what are those ramifications going to be like in 30 years from now?
Right. That's not to say you don't sleep in now and then, but maybe you hit the gym a little bit more than you would have.
Exactly.
That chocolate cake is good today, but I am going to have more vegetables tomorrow, and try to balance those things out, because it all adds up, right?
Exactly.
And adds us down that path.
Yeah. All right. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us. So if you would tell us who can you help, how you can help them, and of course, how they can reach out and get a hold of you.
Sure. So we'll start with the easy part first. My website is easy. It's just caretreks.com, CareTreks. My email is amanda@caretreks.com. Phone number is 720-512-7441. And I'm certainly willing to have conversations with almost anyone. I am really, truly working to grow that employee benefit piece that CareTreks is offering in the Denver area first, just because I'm very embedded here. But that does not mean I'm not ready to start expanding my network and talk to organizations outside of Colorado and start growing this. That's ultimately the goal, is to have a network of CareTreks guides around the country in these cities to help support. So if there's an employer who says, this is what we need, we'll figure something out, we'll make it work. So, but certainly reach out through the website.
Okay, awesome. Again, thanks a lot. That's going to do it for another episode of Educational. Of course, I am Roy.
I'm Terry.
And you can find us at www.educational.com. We're on all the major social media networks, as well as the major podcast platforms: iTunes, Google, Stitcher, Spotify. If we're not on one that you listen to your podcast on, if you'll reach out, we'd be glad to add you. Also, if you're a professional in this space, if you have a good family story from the caregiver or the adult child perspective, we would love to get you on and let you share your story with everybody. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your family.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.